joining another week of our anti-imperialist campaign action weeks. These weeks are designed to go deeper with each of our Code Pink campaigns, learn more about the people behind the movements and how all of our liberation work is connected to Palestine, to Venezuela, what we'll be talking about tonight, to Cuba, to peace with China, and to peace with the planet. If you've missed any of our webinars, calling parties, or didn't grab any resources, feel free to be looking throughout the night. I'll put two in right now, our webinar from last week, as well as our current sign-up page for Latin America actions, and stay till the end to be in action with us and to receive all the updates for the rest of this week and the rest of our campaign actions. I'm going to briefly go over the norms, and then I will pass it to Michelle to get us started. But as always, we need to be respectful. This isn't a debate, but a discussion. We're not here to mediate arguments. We're here to learn from each other, be in action together. We want to be kind, be curious, and please, above all else, if you could please stay muted, put your thoughts and questions in the chat. We record and live stream all of our actions and all of our webinars for future use. So we want to make sure that this will be useful for people for years and years to come to learn from. So thank you all so much once again for being here, and I will pass it to Michelle.
Thank you so much, Grace. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for this Monroe Doctrine 2.0, the Venezuela case study. I'm Michelle Elner. I'm the coordinator of Code Pink's Latin America campaign, and I'm so glad to be with you as we continue this urgent conversation on U.S. intervention and Latin America resistance. Before we begin this discussion, I want to take a moment to share what this campaign is about and why it matters so much right now. At Code Pink, our Latin America campaign is working to finally break with this logic that has defined U.S. policy towards Latin America. That is this idea for 2 centuries that Latin America is somehow the U.S.'s backyard, and we are organizing to demand a good neighbor policy for the 21st century that is rooted on respect and sovereignty and non-intervention. And our mission is simple, but is urgent, is to inspire, educate, and activate people in the US to finally see our neighbors as partners in building a hemisphere of peace, dignity, and true solidarity. And this commitment to solidarity is not just an idea, it's something that at least I've experienced personally when I first became involved with Code Pink. The US regime was trying to seize the Venezuelan embassy, which they eventually did. And there I met this amazing group of peace activists who refused to let that happen. They stand inside the embassy and defending a nation that was under attack. You know, I learned there that solidarity isn't just words, but or statements. It's the courage to act, to show up, and to stand with others, even when it's uncomfortable or even risky. We know that U.S. intervention in Latin America takes many forms. It's a hybrid warfare, which is a coordinated system of economic blockades, covert operations, media manipulation, and military buildup. And it also takes a form here at home with ICE raids and deportation flights. It's the domestic phase that empire does abroad. It's now here too. The resistance also have many faces. It's Venezuelans organizing under a blockade. It's Cuban doctors bringing healthcare around the world. It's Nicaraguan communities defending sovereignty. Our region is full of life, creativity, and courage. And that's what this campaign tries to uplift, right? Last week we had in our Latin America Weeks of Action, we brought that vision to life. I co-hosted with Medea Benjamin a webinar about the Monroe Doctrine and the long history of the Monroe Doctrine, featuring Jill Clark Gallup and Vivian Lesnick Westman and Steve Elner. Then on Tuesday, we had Terry Madsen and we had Adrian unpack Code Pink's film Migration Made in the USA, exposing the US role in forced migration. And then throughout the week, through articles and media posts and radio shows, we kept connecting the dots. Then finally on Friday, we had a great time at the Latin America dance workshop because, like it was joy is also resistance, and that's the way we closed the week. Um, it's how we remember what we are fighting for and not only what we're fighting against. And today we are carrying that energy forward. 2 centuries after the Monroe Doctrine was declared, Washington continues to use this logic to justify domination across our hemisphere and to help unpack how this doctrine is being not even rebranded, but repackaged and weaponized today. We have amazing guests. We're joined today by Ana Bracho, Carlos Ron, and Diego Sequera, which Terry is going to introduce a little later. Three powerful Venezuelan voices who will, help us see through the struggle and through the eyes of those living its consequences and leading the fight towards sovereignty. And guiding today's conversation is our incredible volunteer, Terry Madsen, someone that we at Code Pink love very much. She has dedicated all her life, basically, to Latin America. She has spent over 40 years traveling and organizing delegations, I think, through every country in the hemisphere, I think. Yeah, she's volunteers with Compass Beyond Borders, and she also works with the Venezuela Solidarity Network, Sanctions Kill, and she also hosts Code Pinks, of course. What the F is going on in Latin America? Terry, please take it away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a very powerful and timely conversation ahead with 3 guests who we're so very fortunate. They're all joining us live from Venezuela tonight. And we're so happy for all of you that you could do this. So let me just jump right into who's with us tonight. Ana Bracho from Zulia. And Ana is a writer and lawyer with a master's in law from the University of Caen, Lower Normandy, author of several books and recipient of the Annabelle Nassau Journalism Award 2019, Best Writer 2020, and the Simón Bolívar National Journalism Award 2023 for her column Mejor Ni Te Cuento in Epale, Caracas. And we also this evening have Diego Sequera joining us, who has been with us before. Diego holds a degree in literature from the Central University of Venezuela. Most of his work has focused on journalism, research, and political analysis. He has also worked as an editor, translator, and screenwriter, as well as a consultant, a frequent contributor to various national and international media outlets in both English and Spanish, and he has been on a lot of podcasts recently. He received the award for Best Opinion Article at the Sob Media Festival in Tehran. And also tonight we have Carlos Ron joining us, who all of you have seen before on some of our WTF episodes. Carlos is a former Venezuelan diplomat who served as Deputy Foreign Minister for North America 2018 to 2025, and President of the Simón Bolívar Institute for Peace and Solidarity Among Peoples 2020 through 2025. He holds degrees from Rutgers University and the University of Brasilia and is pursuing a PhD in Our American Studies at CELARC. His research focuses on hyperimperialism, Bolivarianism, Marxism in Latin America, and people's diplomacy. He contributed to Why Venezuela, How the US Tries to Undermine Democracy and Sovereignty in Latin America, and he is also currently with Nuestra America, with the Tricontinental Institute. So welcome all of you. What an honor to have all of you joining us live from Venezuela tonight. So happy that we could make this happen. Let me just review a couple of things with the audience before I have the three of you jump into the conversation. Last week, as Michelle mentioned, was part one of our Monroe Doctrine project with the 2-week campaign. And Steve Elner was one of the guests, and he highlighted a couple key points that I think we should reiterate. Capitalism, empire, natural resources, cheap labor are all related to imperialism. There was a specific focus last week on Cuba and Nicaragua. And so tonight is specifically dedicated to how the Monroe Doctrine applies to Venezuela. A lot has been happening in the last 24 hours. And so as I check my social media, I see there's so many things we have to keep talking about. And I hope we stay up to the current moment with all of you. So maybe I think we should start very briefly, just for those of you who are joining us who want to know so much more about why Venezuela is in the crosshairs of the United States. It's not anything new. So maybe, Carlos, you could give us a brief recap of Monroeism versus Bolivarism so that we can all understand how differently the North and South of America view foreign policy and integration. And then all of us could perhaps talk about the last 20, 25 years, very briefly, a brief timeline, let's say 2002 through this moment as to the various forms of US intervention on Venezuela, so that we can see that this moment is an escalation in a continuum of intervention over the last 25 years of Chavismo. So, Carlos, maybe you could give us a quick recap, and then then all of you maybe give us a nice timeline of intervention, and then let's have a conversation about what's happening in this moment.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Terry, Michelle, and everybody for putting this together. This is, for us here in Venezuela, we are very grateful for this opportunity to speak to a U.S. audience and everybody else around the world who's joining. You are asking me to summarize 200 years of tensions between in an entire continent in very quickly. So let's see how I can do that. But I think that the way we could probably approach this is to say that there's over 200 years of tensions between the former colonies in this continent, and then you have a great collective of those who were colonies from the Spanish Empire, who fought, after, by the inspiration given of the Haitian Revolution. They fought for the independence of South America, or all of what we know now as Latin America, basically under the principles of unity, trying to maintain the regional unity, trying to maintain defense sovereignty, creating their nation states, and also with a social project that I think we can say try to defend dignity, because what is often not included in the history evaluation of the Bolivarian project, the one led by Simon Bolivar, is that there was a social project, one that was against slavery, one that was for public education, one that was for land distribution, that was really out there to achieve emancipation. And this comes into contrast with the northern U.S. Type of colonies that became free or establish themselves based on manifest destiny and based on the belief that there was some sort of divine uh, uh, interventionism that was allowed or that was expected, wanted, because they had become a free democratic society, that they had to sort of teach this on to the rest of the world. This was sort of a destiny that was set out by Providence. And sometimes it took the form also of a burden, the so-called white man's burden, where you feel like you had to help out these other peoples around the world because they were of somehow of inferior race or inferior cognitive potential. So what you have is this conflict. It's actually it starts even before the Monroe Doctrine, because you had in 1786 you had Jefferson as president of the United States reject the idea of helping out the Spanish American Revolution, because he thought that the U.S. wasn't strong enough to take each country one by one if Spain was out to lose. So, in other words, the U.S. already by 1786 was seeing the rest of the continent or the Latin American countries as some sort of extension to the U.S. Bringing all this down to now, because this is a 200-year history of intervention in order to sort of preserve this relationship from the United States, or preserve this dominance. See, what I think we're seeing, and we can talk about this more in detail a little bit further down the road, but I think what we're seeing today is that because the U.S. is losing its hegemony in face of the rest of the challenges around the world, in the growth of multipolarity, in the growth of China as an economy, but also as a scientific innovator, in the growth of Russia with a more, with a stronger military than before, etc. The U.S. is now thinking that it needs to reaffirm its dominance over what it always thought as its sphere of influence, as its natural backyard, like some people have said. The U.S. is trying to restore its dominance over the region, and for that, in this specific case of Venezuela, it's important that there is for the U.S. to accomplish a regime change operation in Venezuela, because Venezuela is a country that stands out against U.S. foreign policy, against the dominance from Washington. It's really has been an independent country for the last 26 years, and that's something that at this moment in time, where it needs to the U.S. needs to reconfigure its strength in the region. It needs to sort of get that type of project out of the way. And just to sort of confirm that, in project 2025 that you all know about, as Trump's what Trump's been following, or some of most of the people in the administration come from, there's actually a term for this. It was called re-hemisphering, and it's basically suggesting that the U.S. should capture the supply chains in the region as part of the requirement to achieve U.S. economic security for this new time. So this 200-year-old idea is still very much alive now, and is still very much part of that project that has put Trump back in the presidency.
Diego or Ana, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think it's a good start. Maybe further on.
Okay. I see some of you have hands raised, questions. We're going to let our guests talk, and then we'll be happy to do some Q&A at the end of our presentation. So maybe the three of you can quickly go through the last 20, 25 years. I guess I'm thinking 2002 to begin, of U.S. intervention specifically directed at Venezuela, I mean, there's been coup attempts, there's been sanctions, there's been mercenary interventions, all types of warfare, hybrid warfare, media. And I think it's important to maybe we could quickly review all that, because what we're seeing in this moment, I mean, literally like right now, and the three of you in Venezuela really know this, is a continuation of intervention, as Carlos said, started 200 years ago, but with the US rehemisphering, that's a great term, specifically in 2002 with the one-day coup against Chavez. Maybe we could review that timeline and the different types of warfare. And then, Grace, I'd like you to share with us a video clip, and then we can go into what is happening for all of you in Venezuela right now today. Does that sound good?
You know, I would like to, now that you asked us, I would like to add something to what Carlos said, which is something that's usually overlooked. Regarding the early stages of independence, what happened here was actually the template and the inspiration for what happened afterwards in the unification of Italy and Germany, for example, and also in the Greece Revolution. So just to realize how it already had a global impact back in 200 years ago.
How profound it was. So
yeah, exactly.
So let's. Maybe I should maybe I should start this and have the three of you jump in, and you can tell me, you can expand as you like and correct me if I'm wrong. So you have seen, the three of you, Michelle too, in our country, a coup against Chavez in 2002. We've seen Guarimbas led by Leopoldo Lopez, who is now back in the news. We've seen President Obama declare Venezuela a national security threat, which led to the ability to sanction Venezuela, which started, I believe, like December of 14th against PDVSA, yes, and then it's just been ratcheting up since. 2019, we saw the US recognize Guaido as president of Venezuela. We saw the capture of the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C., which Michelle referred to when she opened the program. We've seen mercenary invasions from Colombia in 2020. We've seen the seizing of Venezuelan assets. I'm specifically thinking of the Novo Banco case, Bank of London, and Citco. And recently, we have seen the Nobel Peace Prize go to Maria Machado. So we see Norway giving, the US and the West basically a green light to intervene in Venezuela. So we've got a timeline of 25 years that's really important to understand, because today is a continuum of that and a ratcheting up of that. And maybe, Grace, could you show the breakthrough news clip for the audience?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'd head to Russia or China right now.
Because
his days are numbered. Something's going to happen. Whether it's internal or external, I think something's going to happen.
what do you think removing Maduro would signal to other socialist regimes?
It'll be the end of Cuba. America is going to take care of the southern hemisphere. And we're going to make sure that there's freedom and democracy.
The examples you're citing also involved ground troops. You said time for Maduro to go.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like regime change. Are you talking about troops on the ground?
I'll let the president speak to that. I'm talking about a briefing that would expand military operations potentially from the sea to the land. It is time for Maduro to go. It was time for Ortega to go. The Monroe Doctrine has been robustly applied by President Trump.
If I was Maduro, I'd head.
So, wow. So maybe Anna, could you comment on this moment? It's so wonderful to have you here. I wanted to meet you for a while, so I'm really pleased you could join us. Maybe you could talk about all these various forms of warfare from a feminist perspective, how women specifically and children are affected by warfare, and what is happening now with warships sitting off the coast and this heated narrative.
Yes, good night. I am pleased to be with you. Well, I agree this has been a long way. It's not something that have started to pass in the last week. We have all the way of the revolution, we have been under attack. The attack have changed the ways, the intensity maybe, because yes, we can see that it has started at the same moment Chavez has the power. But also we have this powerful moment that start with Obama when Venezuela is called a threat for America. Since that moment, we have been living in a country that has serious difficulty to use his money to go and come to the international commerce, and we have been we have been living in a country where the right have not the resources to be guaranteed. When we are a woman in a country that has been in a not traditional way of war, but is in war, we have continued to have the normalization, to don't have the access continue to the more important resource for normality at home. We are talking that the women have to stay at home where something you don't have the access to the water, when you can have the access to the electricity, and that make the function of care very harder than normally. Then we have, it's very important to say that it has been a way when women in Venezuela has started to have new ways to relations, because it's in community that we can survive maybe, because you have to see that at 2015, by then the problem was with the food. We have a very hard moment to have essential food, to have access to the hygiene supplies for the kids, and that made very hard to be a woman. When we are in Venezuela, since the last year, we are talking that women have at least to stay at the country with these difficulties that make a space more compatible with gender violence. And we have talking that the situation make women more it's easier to believe that get out of the country is a solution. When you see the migration of Venezuela, that's a topic we are talking as very much, you see that women have been a victim of a lot of problems when they become migrants. So you can see that the Venezuelan women as affected because they are selected to see that it's women who it's sexualized at the news, who is responsible for the problem. In Peru, we have seen that the Venezuelan was select to say that it was a problem for Peruvian families that become separate because the presence of Venezuelan women. And that we see in the migration, we have the half of the migration are women. We see the problem of access for the issues of sexual health. We have to see that laboratories have leave the country, and that make a problem for contraception. We don't have really numbers, official numbers of the how deep is this problem. We have two publications, one of Ana Mendy, who make a study for the affectation of the children, because the families in the situation of the poverty that is caused by these measures are more vulnerable. Also, that we have género con clase that have made a study with the situation of the women. But for me, it's very important to close this moment to say that it has started a lot of time before. We have the problem that the question make the country doesn't have access to the money, and that have a direct impact of social rights. Social rights are very important for Venezuelan revolution because it's a dream of social justice that is in the heart of this revolution. And we have been seeing how the government capacity to guarantee the right have become a lot of problem in this time. It's for me an image that I want to share is that Venezuela have a very big health system. You can see hospitals, you can see clinics, etc. But now you have to see that the buildings, it's normal that they don't have doctors, or they don't have the medicine that you need to help. And this have to see with a process that has made an migration that is unused to let the country without the professional that the country have made in the revolution for the people have rights. And also you have to see that the process is now in a very strong moment, but it's always been like this. And the problem is that we are being under other ways of war, the war that is always presented like legitimate, like is a war against the bad government. It's a war against now the narco, or it's simple that it's the war of the against the possibility of another model in America. And in this sense, is an continuation of Monroe Doctrine, because it's the same it's the same idea that the South have not tried to have their own story. And how we pay in South the desire to have another history, well, we pay by a word that make people live in difficult for make them be in accord to our regime change.
You know, there's something that there's a couple things you mentioned, and maybe Diego, you could expand on this. I mean, you've really well, Anna, described that this is ongoing. It's not new, and it's U.S. warfare against Venezuela for the last 25 years. And you mentioned social resources and financial resources. I would also argue natural resources, and the narrative being used, and it did start, I think March, I want to say, of 2020, when William Barr indicted Nicolas Maduro on narco trafficking charges. Maybe, Diego, could you expand a little bit on that narrative being used, that narco trafficking narrative being used against Venezuela? And we're also seeing it now expand to Colombia and Mexico.
Sure. So this first, and then you want an outline of presidents of our biggest states in our crazy history afterwards?
Well, let's stick to Venezuela and how this narco trafficking narrative, how and why it was created, and how it's being used. I mean, murderously being used in recent weeks.
Yeah. Correct. Well, you know, it's if you, per the literature that you can find, which is pretty insightful, and I'm talking about in the literature I'm talking about, it's John Bolton's and Mark and Pompeo books. The chapters dedicated to Venezuela are pretty much insightful. Of course, you know, they all play their own game, and they're all going to show themselves as the enlightened one during this process. But I truly recommend that reading in order to get to the sort of origins of this stage we are now. And yes, correct. I agree with you, Terry. That it started in, we're talking about June 2020, to be more exact. So, and chronology here matters because that's a bit more than a month after Operación Gideon Operation Gideon. So, and this is on Esper's book, by the way. So there's this meeting, like this, already Trump is already losing focus on Venezuela. There's a lot of frustration going on, especially after the operation, and trying to at least
Operation Gideon being the mercenary attack from Colombia.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, exactly. Some people over there call it the Bay of Piglets. I actually related more to the antebellum U.S. filibustering, but that's another story anyway. But it rhymes historically. But anyway, the thing is that the main conclusion of this meeting was basically we don't have a case for democracy or bringing, liberating Venezuela or whatever. It wasn't not a matter of politics. This is a matter of a criminal structure. So Maduro has to be judicialized, and this should be treated then as a matter of security, not a matter of war, of regime change explicitly, not on a quote unquote on a political level. So this is the moment they actually indict, and that's what I mean when they're brainstorming. Barr says basically, look, this is what we should do. We should go Noriega with this guy and just indict him. Starting, they even, and it makes sense. I mean, Barr, it's also connected to Iran Contra, and that's actually the prototype. If you think of how Greg Grandin introduced it. So basically, at that moment, there's this paradigm shift regarding the means of and the ways of representing Venezuela on the conversation, on media, and on policy. There's even this report by Douglas Farrar for IBI Consultants, which is, it's dated like a month after the indictment, in which he gave the proofs, which also mentions, by the way, something close to El Cartel de los Soles and all the tropes they're currently using now in order to justify everything they've been doing so far. And so it was already think tank material, is what I'm trying to say here. It was also shaping policy. And so it's not a matter of a state or a government, it's a matter of a criminal organization. Therefore, you have different toolbox in order to act, in order to intervene, in another country. In this case, of course, Venezuela. Mind you, this is the very same moment that Honduras was at their final stage of shaping itself as a full-blown narco state, just like Ecuador is now. So, of course, it has never been an issue of drugs. You can also think about it this way. When Hillary Clinton was dealing with the fact that they weren't able to engage with Cuba on Cold War terms during her, while she was the Secretary of State, she writes about this and she says, well, so we can turn this into a matter of human rights. It's as elastic as that. I mean, it's just a means of adaptation. So this was the new iteration in Trump 1, let's call it that way. So this actually, it was already rolling, it was already functioning, it was already, and it kept existing and developing and amounting throughout the Biden years. Although they changed tactic, they changed interest, they changed approach, they changed styles, of course. Now, and trying also to distance themselves from Trump, and also, go Obama indirect approach style through NGOs and so forth. I mean, they just basically changing the strategy, and this remained the whole narco paradigm. Regardless of being still alive, it was on the back burner. This, of course, comes in force a bit before the elections on 2024, when the words Tren de Aragua started to get into the conversation. And of course, linked to migration, linked to TPS, linked to the Venezuelan migration itself, which is a complete subject. And so,
but that's the whole point of this form of warfare. The sanctions, the narco trafficking narrative is to force migration, make life very difficult. I mean, it's been warfare against Venezuela for 25 years. And as Ana said, with, the Obama decree in March of 2015.
Sure. Also what? It also was on
I mean,
steroids.
the three of you have been living under warfare for 25 years.
Yes, it's boring more than exhausting at this point. So yeah, that's basically the moment. So there's already this spin and this criminalization idea going on regarding Venezuela and the Venezuelan migration, and like linking it up to the main elements of the Trump campaign, which includes all the migration issue, the whole cultural war, and so forth. And yeah, the anti-war campaign, but which was usually betrayed by Trump throughout the campaign itself. The way he addressed Venezuela, it's a good example, talking about I would have taken all that oil, and stating the obvious, which is something we should thank Trump. I mean, Trump broke the imperial omerta. Now it's all in the open, and there's no hiding of anything. So that's functional for anyone else to be able to identify the president right now. So there's by the way, another report written by Joseph Humeyer for Heritage, the same people for the Project 2025, regarding El Tren de Aragua, and stating that it was a Nicolás Maduro proxy entity that was operating through proxy, and relying on plausible deniability. I mean, he actually says this. This is actually the baseline for the executive order that declared narco-terrorist El Tren de Aragua. And this is all, overblowing facts and half-truths, and of course, a huge amount of lies and spin. So there's this situation, which is the new Trump approach, which has like started like with two different tracks. One closer to him, which is Grenell, and Marco Rubio on the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually proved to be effective, the Grenell approach to Venezuela. And this became a problem for the new Secretary of State, who had a very different plan, a very clear one, a historical one, and and outspoken also. I mean, he has been quite vocal about this for a long time, and he hasn't stopped ever to talk about this.
You know,
So,
there was, can I just add something? Your comment about Grenell and Rubio, the two different camps or two different, arms of the, I think it was September 1st that Maduro had an international press conference. And he was really clear in that conference that the problem is Rubio. He felt Grenell was a good negotiator. And he also said he didn't particularly have a problem with Trump, that they have two very different worldviews, but that they could talk. And he was emphatic, and he mentioned, Rubio multiple times in that press conference, that Rubio's the problem, Rubio's the problem. And the problem for the United States and those of us, in the anti-war movement in the States is that Rubio was unanimously confirmed by the Senate as Secretary of State in January of this year. So we can't say we didn't know this ramping up of policy against Venezuela was not coming.
It's what happened after our president said that? What happened with Grenell, like a week after those statements?
Yeah,
he was blocked.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
He's
also that's
the Kennedy Center now, I think. So I wonder, all of you. Oh my gosh, we could probably talk for a good hour or two more. We've got a couple specific questions, and
allow me to finish just one single point in order to understand how this works shortly.
Yeah.
And this is where we have seen now all this discussion about war powers and Congress demanding that this discussion goes through Congress as it should, according to the your Constitution and whatnot. But it's a quite easy discussion because they're going to just basically going to say this is not a state, this is a criminal organization, so there's no need to declare war.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why it's a legal battle. I think Rand Paul said the other day that he wasn't supporting military intervention in Venezuela, but with the attack on the launches coming from the North Coast, that it could be labeled a police action. Well, there was a big police action in Vietnam in the 60s and early 70s too. So thank you for clarifying that. All right, so we've got several questions. This is a little, how much money will the Democrats in Congress make if Venezuela is overthrown? And so I think the question is alluding to the control of natural resources and procurement of U.S. and transnational business interests, oil specifically. But Venezuela has diamonds, gold, and rare earth minerals too, which is now back in play because of the sanctions on China. Any comment on that? It would be helpful for me to know why the question is the Democrats specifically, because for me it would be like members of Congress as a whole. It's all one party in my mind. Does anybody want to address that?
Venezuela as a subject, it has always been a bipartisan matter. What only changes its style, its methods, its tactics, but the overall strategy is always the same. So we are always swinging between soft power, smart power, indirect approach, NGOs, proxies, unconventional means, and if it's democratic government, and then suddenly when it swings to the other side, it's going to be more explicit gangster-like approach just have been seen not only with Trump, it was also kind of like that with during Bush. So that's like the two tactics. It's a matter of tactics, but and also, mind you, then this is how hypocritical the whole discussion is about their concerns regarding military action in El Caribe, because you see Tim Kaine, you see Adam Schiff, you see all these people that actually sponsored, co-sponsored, promoted bills against Venezuela, sanctioning Venezuela, and suddenly they're very worried about what's going on. It's pretty funny to see, so that actually says to me as a Venezuelan, that's all just a domestic thing, and it's a culture war thing, and it's just, you're not going to do anything to stop this. I actually believe more Rand Paul or Thomas Massey than any one of these guys, because they are all complicit in this. They all have, at different stages, done something to widen and deepen the whole frame of intervention through all means available. So so someone is going to win in any case in that given scenario. Someone in the Democratic Party would also be earning, and that might be also the reason people like Bob Menendez and others were actually so active at some point in time.
So that leads to a more broader question, and this is for you, Carlos. Can you elaborate a little bit about why the USA is trying to control and colonize Latin American countries through proxy wars? That's an expansion of Diego's comment.
Well, I mean, again, it's the dual necessity to attack the first to attack the project. It's a project that defies U.S. hegemony in the region. It's a project that says, you can have another form of development that doesn't require you to comply with the whatever the State Department wants you to do. And then on the other side is what Diego was saying, the great amount of resources that are here. I mean, you got to think, the United States was at a point after the Cold War that establishes its hegemony around the world. It had control over natural resources. It had control over the financial architecture. It had control over communications. It had control over technological development, and it had control over the military. Today, that's coming into question because of the developments in other parts of the world. So you can't say anymore that the U.S. has the sole capacity to advance in things like semiconductors or artificial intelligence. Although in a very small type of way still, but there are challenges starting to come to the U.S. financial system. I mean, you have BRICS, you have you already have countries cooperating with each other in their own currency. So it's a way to defy the monopoly of the dollar. You have countries reasserting their sovereignty over resources, like Venezuela did when it went through the renationalization of the oil industry. So there's a weakness now in the U.S. I mean, which basically only has left the communicational power that it has, because it still has the influence to control narratives. That's why it changes, and whenever to see it fit, whatever needs it has. I mean, like right now, like Diego was saying, if we're calling this a regime change because of democracy in Venezuela, because you want freedom, so forth. The U.S. public, at least the MAGA base, is not really going to buy that, because the MAGA base has been preaching for several years now that the end of U.S. expansion, military expansion around the world, and endless wars. So now then you treat it as an issue of national security, more of an issue of regular crime. So the U.S. still controls the narrative, but and the U.S. has the power, the military power. That's the strength it really has, so the superiority it still has. But if you're losing everything else, then you have to somehow, get a hold of whatever resources are left, so you can continue and this race. I mean, and I don't think, by the way, I don't think the rest of those countries, in the case of Russia or the BRICS countries or anything, or China, I don't think they really are in a competition with the US. I don't think they want to compete with the United States, because there's different world views on how the world society should move forward. But the U.S. feels this, and the U.S. is trying to, or the U.S. believes that by controlling the resources, the chains of production, like all these goods in Latin America, then it will be able to become stronger. I mean, just think about the rest of what we've seen this whole year. You've seen the U.S. needs to retake control of the Panama Canal, and is remilitarizing that zone, and it's expelling the Chinese companies from there. It's talking about taking over Greenland, because because of climate change, there's new pathways in the Arctic, and there's rare earths that are coming up, and it wants those resources. I mean, you're thinking about Argentina, where they just subjected the country to basically blackmail the country into voting for Milei, because that way it could also have access to resources that are precious in Argentina, and we can go on for the rest of the continent. But it's a need to recompose itself as the most powerful country and hold those resources. And it can't do that in Europe. It can't do that in Asia. It has to do, the only place it really has access to try to do it is this region.
Can I just say, taking on what Carlos was saying about China, is that I think that maybe China doesn't want to compete in the hemisphere. It does have influence, but they are doing it in a constructive way. Like, they have the resources to invest in infrastructure and things that are positive for those countries, right? Meanwhile, the US is more like an empire in decadence, I guess. They don't have the means. They only have the military power and the coercion to do this. So thank you so much. We are almost, it's 2 minutes. What we're going to do is
we have so many more questions.
I know, and there's many questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to take action right now. And then those who wants to stay for at least 20 minutes more, they can. If not, that. But let's do the action right now. The action that we have is let me check this. Okay, so we have two actions right now. We are calling on we're shaming basically the Nobel Committee for giving the Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado, who is a far-right politician. We've talked about it right now in this webinar today. She has openly supported U.S. coup. She has called for sanctions, even a foreign intervention of her own country. So we are basically shaming the Nobel Committee. So please, I think Grace is putting this on the chat. And then we have a new petition, a new action that we're doing right now. That is a petition to Admiral Alvin Halsey. He's the commander of the Southcom, the Southern Command. And he's stepping down. We hear that is because maybe he's not comfortable with what is happening, but we are asking him to be a whistleblower, to speak up, to, if he's going to leave, to be on the right side of history and speak up the truth of what's going on, and why is the U.S., why are they doing this drone strikes and all these attacks on Venezuela and on Colombia? So please sign our petition, and we will continue this conversation. And those who wants to stay for 20 minutes more, you can. And thank you so much.
Can our three guests stay with us for a few more minutes?
Yeah, okay.
If you want.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. And everyone, be sure to check out those actions and and please sign them and share. So, Carlos, your prior comments nudged a couple thoughts, and I'm just going to share this before I go back to all these questions. Earlier this year, Rubio did overtly say, you know, the world is structured as a multilateral project in this moment. And I wonder, given what you've shared about the US building these wars all over the hemisphere, given that Rubio's acknowledged that the world is multipolar, is the US attempting to build a hemispheric bloc, a bloc of the Americas, exclusive of Eurasia, exclusive of Russia, China, India, and just have a bloc in among the other blocs that we see emerging?
This is a question. I mean, this is something. No, it does make sense, and I think it is something that is kind of like in the you know, it's part of the debate. I mean, you can ask whether you know, it's considered that the U.S. has accepted that unipolarity is no longer, you know, possible or not. But there is at least some analysis that say that even if the U.S. wants to accept it or not, multipolarity is already reversible. So because it is irreversible, and because it can make the gains it wanted to in places like, you know, Eastern Europe, or I mean, the fact that the Ukraine issue hasn't been resolved is, you know, it's not allowing U.S. to get into the, you know, minerals that it was trying to get a deal with earlier on. The fact that it cannot get to Asia, you know, the way it wanted to, and so forth. It tells, it forces it to say, well, you know, the easiest place I have to, you know, concentrate these resources is still Latin America. This is the region that, you know, the others are not going to come in and you know, and compete more than they already are, because I mean, China is now an important trade partner to almost all Latin American countries. So before that's, you know, falls apart, I mean, that dominance that the U.S. has, let's kind of rebuild it all together. Let's kind of put it all together, and that's why you see this, you know, more this attempt of creating, like you said, creating this unified bloc under the hegemony of the U.S. I think that I mean, that's the way of reading it. Yes, for sure.
Kind of United Federation of the Americas. Whether you want it or not, it's being imposed.
Not federated, because there's no. I mean, it's like an extension of U.S. dominance. There's no regards to any of our identities here. I mean, it's colonization.
More sovereignty. Okay, so here I have a question for Ana and Diego. What are the vested interests and benefits for USA of overthrowing a democratically elected government of Venezuela, Latin America as a whole? And I think Carlos answered that pretty well. Do either one of you want to add to that?
Yes. By the way, is it better now? Because thanks, gracias, Ana. I didn't know I was making some noise from here. Sorry, apologies.
We're just glad you're here.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, what Carlos described accurately, it's completely supported on Rubio's legislative action. As head of the committee of the Small Business Committee, I think is the name, not on other more sensitive or strategic. He has actually two reports, one from 2019, I think, and the other one from last year, which are called Made in China 2025 and Made in China 2025, 9 years later. This is important because basically what he does he studies the made in China branding, which is the moment that the Chinese Communist Party decided we're not going to do more, low cost goods. We're going to go through high value industries now, which includes all the strategic ones, from AI to quantum computing, and also shipyards and new materials. I think there are 12 specific areas. On the first report, he warns these are the dangerous ones, and then 9 years later, he not only insists on these 12, but he admits several ones where already U.S. has lost supremacy.
Mhm.
Among this corpus, which I actually recommend to check it out, he has also done different set of laws and bills regarding all what Carlos has been saying, which is reshoring capitals, taxing U.S. corporations if they stay outside of the United States, bringing industry back into the U.S., and all of that. And this goes along because he has doing a huge PR campaign for several years. Goes along with the articles he has been writing, which also overlaps with his own political project, which is quite interesting because I don't know in what moment he became so smart. At what moment he went to the crossroad and became and sold to the devil even more, and became the current prince of darkness basically. So there's this article on the national interest from 2023, from late 2023, in which he reviews a visit as a senator to several Latin American countries, 2024, I'm sorry, in which he talks about his, he outlines who are friends and who are foes. I mean, he puts the white hats and the black hats accordingly. And basically, along with what all we have been saying already, he actually evinces the idea that if U.S. corporations or the corporations that now are going to invest and set up shop in the U.S. don't like the labor laws and the fiscal laws or whatever, we have all this other space, which is, of course, Latin America, as an alternative on fiscal matters and labor laws and whatnot, and it will be considered under U.S. capital jurisdiction. So this gives you another element, which is as important as the one we're talking about, which is basically Latin America has become, to this administration, after 200 executive orders, have become a domestic issue. It's not anymore a matter of international affairs. That's for other countries, because basically Marco Rubio was also called a political weirdo by Global Times. So it's sort of official Chinese stand regarding. Rubio says in these two reports that if the U.S. doesn't catch up in this situation, they're going to go through 100 years of humiliation. And that's how the Chinese call him a political weirdo, because of that. Because, of course, I mean, and this also talks about the Thucydides trap, which is this idea that when a superpower is emerging, the current other superpowers are going to start a conflict between both in order to stop it from growing. This is the Thucydides trap between Sparta and Athens. And this has been like the case of empires, Western empires throughout, Western superpowers throughout history, throughout the last 500 years. But Xi Jinping, for example, already said this is not a historical fatalism. This is not a historical given. This doesn't need to happen. And that's the whole, just in that sentence, it's the whole difference. You have to understand how one works facing vis-a-vis the other one. And so
two completely
to
different
front it
paradigms.
Yeah, and to round it all up and to say to rely on something you said, Terry, which you said like this hemispheric area. I mean, this is, if you want, this is, I've been stressing this each and every interview I've been giving, which are a lot this couple of months. They're building a hemispheric wall. It's not a wall that will split the U.S. and Mexico. And this hemisphere includes Greenland, Panama Canal, and
Yeah.
everything else.
Everything.
And the Caribbean, which is by far the most strategic area.
Okay, so speaking of the entire hemisphere, let's I have one more question. We've got 10 minutes, and so I think we should address this. I'm sorry, there's so many questions and they're all important, but this question is, how do we respond to Cuba? Oh no, sorry. Is Venezuela pretty much on its own in the event of a US intervention, or are there countries pledging or giving any type of support beyond verbal condemnations? And I would like to add as a second part to that question, what is the composition of CELAC in this moment? And you know, what is the composition of the hemisphere look like as a second part of that question? And that's open for all three of you to address.
Carlos, you want to go first?
Adelante, adelante.
Adelante. Well, verbal condemnation works on several key arenas, just like diplomacy and foreign relations. That's one that's quite important, and it has also been proven how it could. And I'm not being optimistic, I'm just being a bit factual. It just took too long to see what happens, like, for example, what's going on globally regarding Gaza, and how at least some countries to save face say something, some stupid shit, but they actually have to get involved and, you know, do some boilerplate thing that's going to break the consensus, thinking about the Western countries of Western European countries. So that also explains that there is a leverage. There's a significance to verbal condemnation if it comes from MNOAL, the non-aligned movement, and China and Iran and Russia and so forth, which, by the way, there are many, we have basically strategic agreements with three of them. But this doesn't mean that, of course, there are ways of helping that not even involve military action, as in keeping up the country functioning, supporting on technology and economics, and yes, on security as well. But if you want to expect some world war situation in which there's going to be Russians or Chinese disembarking in Venezuela in order to defend it, that's not going to happen. You're not going to. I don't think we're going to see that even on a level of official countries, depending on what happens, because also they're expanding. This is not a Venezuelan issue anymore. They're expanding it throughout the South Caribbean basin and Colombia. Yeah. They just trying to figure out Colombia differently because they have more influence in the powers that be in Colombia, which are pretty active in and also overthrowing Petro. But that's another element.
Well, they're using the narco-trafficking narrative against Mexico too.
Sure, exactly. But it didn't work well the first time.
See that expansion.
Yeah, President Simon has been quite graceful and smart in the way she has been dealing with this. Yeah. And she has done a great job in that sense. But getting back to this, you can see a different kind of outcome of reaction, and I'm not being idealistic about it. And then I think everyone has to keep this in mind. And I don't know, maybe Carlos could defer, but nationalism is a thing in Latin America. Popular nationalism is a thing, and reactions to foreign meddling is a thing. And so many things could happen on that level, which is not a state necessarily state to state level. I'll leave it at there because I'm stealing all the time.
Can maybe Carlos or Ana, either one of you, we've got 5 minutes, maybe follow up on Diego's comments as to the composition of Latin America in this moment, specific to what is happening within CELAC. And I don't think that it's unrelated that the US is going after the president pro tem of CELAC at the moment, which is Colombia. And so what does the composition of Latin America look like right now in defense of Venezuela? And we should probably throw in Cuba and Nicaragua as well. Carlos, can you address that for us?
Well, I mean, Select it still comprises the whole region. The thing is that some countries have not been active for a while, and not participating in some of the meetings, at least not at high level. For example, Argentina, Paraguay. These are countries that are sort of boycotting, the high level meetings. I mean, you had important contributions in the last presidencies by Honduras, Colombia, Mexico. The countries are still trying to maintain the regional unity, but obviously those that are now more compromised with the U.S. For example, we've mentioned Argentina, but also Ecuador, who has a very straight relationship with the U.S. is basically, since Noboa came to power, has basically militarized the country, and is right now is fighting basically a war against its own indigenous population. You have the case of El Salvador, where Nayib Bukele uh, basically has allowed his country to be used as a prison for rent, setting up these concentration camps for migrants. So it's a tough composition because you have these again these tensions. An important election was just lost by the left in Bolivia. So Alba suspended Bolivia, and most likely we'll see another right wing or hardline right wing government um, end up establishing itself there. But I think I think the one important thing though is that even though that is the scenario, it is very hard for the right-wing governments to defend the operation in the Caribbean. And I think there are conflicting numbers, but right now somewhere close to 40 people have already died in these military operations against these boats. I mean, you can count a couple of boats in the Pacific as well. And I think this is the point here, you know, be, because hostility against Venezuela we have seen for a while. But what's we just went through a whole history, but what we're seeing now is that there are fatal victims now. And this is a game changer, I think, for the region. It's very hard, even the case. I mean, we just have a tensions today. I mean, all over the news today is a tension with Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is allowing the U.S. to bring those warships into the region. Trinidad and Tobago is one of the border countries, so to speak, to with Venezuela, and it was interesting because the new or recently elected anyway prime minister there, she said, yes, we are in support of this drug trafficking operation because we want drug dealers to get caught, and we don't care. We're not going to waste money for trying to rescue drug dealers. But guess what? There is two fishermen from Trinidad who have been hit, and they were not drug dealers; they were fishermen. Yeah. So so the Caribbean now is going to experience firsthand what it means to bring to allow this to come to the region. During the last UN General Assembly, when these things, when we protested, this buildup and so forth, none of these right-wing countries really came up and said, "Oh yes, we are in approval of this." See, it's very difficult for them to hold this up because they know. Because even if you were talking about fighting crime, and drug trafficking, well, where's the due process? Who caught the ship? Who said, who realized what was in the cargo? Who knows who the people on the ships are? So this is completely illegal and out of any type of law. So it's hard to hold that up. And I think what we have to emphasize, it's the need to remember that this is a zone of peace, that we need to establish peace, that we need to defend peace, that it is important for us to come out and say it and spell it out. Even countries that at some point have had disagreement with Venezuela, they're coming out and say, well, it's important that there's no conflict in the Caribbean, that there's no intervention. This is important because I think that's really what we need to do right now. That's the way we can pressure the U.S. administration to hold back.
Okay, Michelle, there's another action for us.
Yeah,
So,
and also there were some ideas on the chat, like creating a timeline. I will work on that. So thank you so much. And yeah, I think we are already at our time. So I just
thank you,
wanted to-
Carlos, Diego, Ana. How wonderful for you to join us. And thank you for the extra time. It really was very gracious of you. And, we'll do everything we can, within our country to alleviate and hopefully stop, what's happening in the Caribbean right off the shores of your country. But so happy you could join us, and happy to see all of you well with electricity and communication capability, and just really what a gift for all of you to join us. And thank you for sharing, all your experience and knowledge. And thank you to the audience as well. Thank you for those of you who stayed.
Thank you, Grace, so much for even staying late. And please join us for the rest of the week. We have more things to come during the week. And on Friday, we have a special Halloween action too. So please stay tuned and see you in the streets and see you online. Thank you for joining.